Hello, people. This is finally the main event, the actual main event. It's a night one of a night one of a night one, the main event of what this whole thing been building to. And what we got here is a round table featuring 5 different people with 5 different perspectives from 5 different backgrounds. And I'm gonna name your name. You introduce yourself, and I'm sure the audience will get to know that. Introducing first, hailing from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, MJ does PR.
Hey, Doc. Thanks for having me on, gentlemen. Thanks for chatting with me. Yeah, I'm Emjaydoespr on most social medias, and yeah, excited to talk wrestling with some buddies.
And now, hailing from Seattle, we got Tay. Talk easy. Take it easy, man. I can't say your screen name. I'm sorry about that. All right.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yep.
my dog started barking right as you did the intro, so I was
All right.
waiting on that. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Welcome aboard, man. Hailing from Oklahoma, he is one of the hosts of All Things Elite, Mr. Floyd Johnson Jr.
Hey everyone, glad to be here. Yeah, I'm ready to roll. Always down to talk.
Yep. And hailing from, I was gonna say Houston, Texas, Seattle. He can say his hometown because he told me he's from multiple places. He's an actor. He's the Tuttles guy, Juan Marron.
Yeah, that's another screen name, but thank you for having me. I know I'm not super active on that particular account anymore, but that's AEW's fault for not using tunnels on their touring stages anymore. But yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. And finally, from Orlando, Florida, one half of Keeping It Strong Style, one half of my favorite podcast. Sorry, Floyd. Sorry, man. This is Mr. Jeremy Donovan.
Hey, what's up, guys? That's actually hailing from Tampa,
Tampa.
Florida.
Oh my gosh.
But it's all good. Yeah,
Yeah.
happy to be here and chat with you guys.
So, what I like to do, well, for those of you that I've talked to on my show, is I like to get to know everybody who's become a fan in pro wrestling because no matter where you're from in this world, if you watch pro wrestling, you got a connection from somebody from, say, like Portugal to the UK to Australia to Canada, and of course, Florida, Oklahoma, New York, California. I'm happy right now that we got the 4 points of we got 3 points of North America, Florida and California and Seattle, Washington, and yeah, I'm happy that we could all come here and commiserate on this thing that I'm doing. And gentlemen, I know that not all of you are WWE fans. I know, and some of you are, well, what I would call like new fans. But we are coming off of WrestleMania weekend, which is typically the most hyped weekend of the wrestling calendar, if you ask most people in the layman terms. So to get us started off, I would like to ask the panel, like, what did WrestleMania mean to you in your fandom versus what it means now? Anybody could start.
I'll jump in.
Thank you, Floyd.
WrestleMania is everything to me. It was the pinnacle. It is the biggest piece of professional wrestling. I was born in 1981. WrestleMania started shortly after, like 84, right? Or is it 85? I always get that confused.
85.
Yeah, 85. Okay. So WrestleMania started like a little before I was 4. My brother's older than me, about 10 years. So he's the one that got me into wrestling. So WrestleMania has always been this thing. It was always something in our house. I remember renting the tape to watch WrestleMania. And it was just like, it was this larger than life thing. You saw people went to WrestleMania, but it was like, no one went to, you didn't know anyone that went to WrestleMania. It was this almost, almost obscure, like imaginary thing that people did, and it was how the year was built. I feel like one of my favorite WrestleMania main events was 12, and I really think 12, Shawn Michaels' boyhood dream, was the start of the road to WrestleMania, because there was that build from him winning the Royal Rumble to the match finally happening and all the things that went in there, and it felt like, other than like maybe Warrior and Hogan at 6, it felt like this digging to this massive thing about who was going to take over, who was going to be the face of the quote-unquote new generation. And I really, that meant a lot to me. So that's, WrestleMania was that. Now WrestleMania, I think, is what Vince envisioned it. Yeah. It is not one show. It is an event. Most people don't just go to WrestleMania. They go to WrestleMania week. You can literally go to WrestleMania week and never attend WrestleMania and still be busy the whole time that you're there. It is larger than that. It is the Super Bowl of professional wrestling. And I do think most wrestling fans think of it like the Super Bowl. Even if they're not watching all year, you watch WrestleMania. My friend Jackie, she told me her mom's like, I think WrestleMania is today. I'm going to watch it. She hasn't watched wrestling all year. WrestleMania is that. And there's a lot of people that don't watch any football all year, but they watch the Super Bowl because there's generally a Super Bowl party or something, though. So WrestleMania has evolved to Vince's vision, but for me, it has lost, even like this weekend, it has lost that gravity to me. Like right now, I'm in my personal fandom, not just because of the podcast that I do, but just based on how I've grown as a wrestling fan over the last 5-6 years of being in the social suplex and actually being all the way in the IWC. I will always say being on the internet and being on the IWC are two completely different things. And since I've joined, my tastes have changed. So, of course, I prefer All In now because it's more of a wrestling-based product. But I always loved my soap opera, which is what WWE is.
Yeah. Because when I look back, this is Doctor talking. When I look back at what WrestleMania means to me, I used to, when I was in high school or when I was like in middle school, we used to always throw a WrestleMania party because my parents knew that me and all my cousins, we loved wrestling back then. So to me, like, the feeling of WrestleMania was like, okay, we're all gonna come together, we're gonna watch this, we're gonna mark out, we're gonna pop for like say like TLC 2, see like Edge and Jeff Hardy do all these crazy things, flying through ladders, flying through tables, watching like WrestleMania 19. Not to talk about Evil Man, but when you see Vince McMahon peek out from under the ring with his bloody face and holding the pipe and looking like as evil as he is in real life, or seeing like, we're talking about WrestleMania moments like Macho Man and reuniting with Elizabeth, or say one of the stupidest things that I saw was the Boogeyman eating worms in a sandwich and talking to Donald Trump. Like, there's for me the memories of like growing up and being with family and absorbing the show. And as I got older, I think the first WrestleMania I attended was WrestleMania 26, which is in Arizona, and being able to sit there in the crowd to watch Undertaker and Shawn Michaels and Batista and John Cena, and seeing like these guys that I've watched like on TV for the last couple decades, just seeing Bret Hart live. I never thought in my life I would see Bret Hart again, besides the one house show I went to in 1997. and it was like it's kind of when I look back at it now, 15 years after attending that, I'm like, wow, I actually saw all these guys that I grew up seeing, and you're right, because during that weekend, I actually went to the both Dragon Gate shows. There was a WrestleCon back then. I'm not sure if it was called WrestleCon, and there was things outside of WWE, but the whole area of Glendale like just felt like a big hub for wrestling. And again, like when they came to LA, and like you also kind of felt that you did feel that hype, and but it came with, even though WWE has always been like corporate, plastic, looking like something out of the magazines, and nowadays it's like even more engrossed, like to people, this is what wrestling should look like, this is what wrestling blah blah blah. And I had this conversation with somebody really smart, Trish. Thank you, Trish. We were talking, and they were saying that WrestleMania used to be an event, but now it's an infomercial for TKO, for people to invest in WWE, and that's how it comes off to me. It feels, I mean, wrestling. The joke of wrestling is, of course, that it's fake, but now it feels just so not what it was for me back, like even 10 years ago, 6 years ago. WrestleMania to me just looks like a commercial or like kind of like a propaganda piece for the company, of saying how big we are. Look at this big stadium. Look at all these fans. Look at all this media around us. And to me, like that makes it. When I look at it now, it just feels so empty. And yeah, as a fan, as a wrestling fan, I guess what I'm looking for back then was what WWE used to give me is not what they give me now, or really American wrestling in general. Does anybody else have anything to say, or would anybody else like to chime in?
I can jump in. I know I probably get pictured as obviously the anti WWE fan, probably with hosting New Japan and being into that product. But like most people, WWE was the first thing I watched. I was born in '89, and my earliest memory as a kid, 3 years old, was watching WWE. So that was the main thing I watched growing up. And kind of like Lloyd was saying, yeah, WrestleMania was that big thing, that thing that it was a bucket list item. Like, when I grow up and make money, I want to go to WrestleMania. It was the end all be all. It was that really big show, and it was just that thing that you were told every wrestler works for. And I feel like growing up, WrestleMania felt a little bit more special because not everybody got on the card. There wasn't two nights. There wasn't NXT. There wasn't all this stuff. There was one night of WrestleMania, 4-hour card, and that's where it was supposed to be. Where the best showed up, all the stories crescendoed, and I feel like there used to be a great job of building stories. Like Floyd mentioned, WrestleMania 12, the Shawn Brett match, Iron Man, that used to be one of my favorite matches of all time, and I feel like that's what WrestleMania was about: building these stories, passing the torch to somebody new. Thinking about WrestleMania 21, John Cena finally win the belt. Like they would have these big like milestone moments would happen at WrestleMania. But for me, and my wrestling taste kind of changed over time. And as I get into the mid 2000s, I'm finding Ring of Honor, I'm finding TNA, and finding international wrestling. And I still watch WWE and kept the eye on things. And my fandom of WWE really kind of started going south. WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, and just what a horrible show that was. And just having Brock beat Roman again. Like, there's just so many frustrating things for me as a fan from WrestleMania 34 that kind of really threw my hands up in the air at that moment. And from that point on, my fandom of WWE has gone smaller and smaller. I went from watching every show to watching just pay-per-views, then only watching the big four, and like now I don't really even watch WrestleMania. I didn't watch anything for WrestleMania this year. It's just not the product for me. And I feel like what it's become, like you guys have mentioned, is kind of like a big infomercial. It doesn't feel special. Yeah, the two nights, like everybody's kind of getting a spot. They're not doing the best job building stories and making it feel special. And so yeah, it just kind of feels inauthentic. especially when you have stuff like AEW and New Japan and some other promotions around the world that just really highlight and emphasize pro wrestling and tell great pro wrestling stories. It's just not what WWE does.
Yeah, WrestleMania used to be where the best wrestle.
That's funny.
Yeah, because as like people, I'm sure like a lot of people have these nostalgic feelings when you bring up WrestleMania, like what you guys were talking about, like these matches, like the Iron Man match, or like Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, I Quit, or like something like, for me, I really, as a kid, when I used to rent a VHS, what I used to love to rewind and rewind over again was Ultimate Warrior versus Randy Savage WrestleMania 7, because a lot of that kind of played into my fandom in pro wrestling, as far as like match quality and like how stories are told, because there's so much drama in the match, because you see Ultimate Warrior hit like, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 like shoulder blocks, hit a press slam. He's killing Macho Man, and like the story of the match is he's trying to keep his career. Macho Man's trying to keep his career because this was a career versus career match, and at the end of the day, of course, the Ultimate Warrior is the Ultimate Warrior, so the Macho Man can't stand up anymore, and the storytelling in the match is Macho Man throws everything he can at Warrior, but nothing can take him down. So my next question is for everybody. Don't be shy to jump in, because this is for everybody. What to you makes a wrestling match worth watching? Yeah, what criteria is there, or is there such a thing as a universally agreed on great match? Like, what makes a great match?
I think a universally agreed on great match is kind of impossible, just because universally great art is impossible. By the nature of an artistic medium, there's always going to be some measure of subjectivity to what people want. I mean, there are people who genuinely believe, I'll name some random highly lauded match from a recent time. Konosuke Takeshita just wrestled Will Ospreay on Dynamite, and it was a match that was largely beloved. But I'm sure if you looked online or asked around to some communities, you would find people who thought that match was terrible.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely didn't like it. And at some point, there's going to be such a divide between how much people want flashy moves or realism, or do they want it to be like anime? Do they want it to be like soap opera? That you're never going to be able to find some universally agreed ideal.
Okay.
Yeah, I would highly agree with that, and I think sticking with the art theme, I think art is very much reflective of the periods and of the artists. If you think of artists like impressionist artists or expressionist artists, when they move from that to post impressionism or post expressionism, it was in reaction to the cultural and environmental changes that were happening during the Industrial Revolution, and so I think with wrestling we've seen that, right? We've seen the times when we've been thrilled by a shoulder block and a gorilla press slam, but we've as performers, as athletes, improve as they evolve, as they take from previous generations and add to that. They create a new form of art, or a new genre of art, and that's what I think. That's kind of what you're seeing, right? With some wrestlers trying to push the envelope, whether it be athletically or how they sell a match using the mic. But I think particularly as it relates to in ring, we've been in a period of evolution for professional wrestling, and there are always going to be laggards who see this as like, this isn't how it used to be. This isn't, and so Juan, you're absolutely right, and I wholeheartedly agree with that position. Right, it's this is an evolution of the art form, and some people are going to enjoy it, and some people are going to be offended by it. It's just the nature of how we are as people.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for me, great match comes down to the 3 S's, which is story, struggle, stakes. Perfect matches to me. Like, if you're going to get a 5-star, you got all 3 of those things. How much of each one can vary, and each match can still be great. Like with Will Ospreay and Takeshita, getting to the next round of the Owen was on the line. It looked like both of the people were trying to win. It was the rematch from my favorite match of 2024, their match at Revolution. That was my match of the year last year. And so when all those 3 things meet together in a match, that's what makes the match perfect. If it's Cody finishing his story and Roman trying to hold his spot, if it's Cody and Dustin trying to prove who's the bigger, better brother at Double or Nothing, Kenny Omega and Okada at Dominion, Kenny Omega finally trying to reach the top of the mountain. Whenever I look at my favorite matches ever, it's all about those things: story, struggle, stakes.
Yeah, that's a great point. I always feel like the general psychology of wrestling, in general, the universal psychology is both guys are trying to win, and in order for me to get into the match I have to believe that one guy, well, at least one person, is trying to win the match, and also the struggle of the match, of the struggle of the win and struggling to win. That's the story of the match, because I really, 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 really like a couple of guys I know people don't really think about, but whenever Toru Yano would have a G1 match, there was like an aura about it. I don't know if anybody watches JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but like there's like a thing in there where there's like a thing that says danger, 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 abre, 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 whenever something is gonna come up. So like, when Toru Yano is gonna like appear behind you, he's gonna clock you in the nuts and get a roll up, and that might be it for you. And a part of like pro wrestling that really appeals to me, besides that, the struggle and the will to win, is I like violence. I really, really like violence. Like, because when I was a kid, one of the big matches that I actually saw like in real time was Cactus Jack versus Big Van Vader on WCW Saturday night. This was after Cactus had lost his ear in Germany. So a lot of the match was based on Vader pounding him in the face, trying to make him bleed for real, trying to like crush him against the guardrails. And if you watch this, I watched it so many times on the Mick Foley DVD. If you watch this when I had to be like about like maybe 9 years old, Vader is holding his face in place like against the turnbuckle and smashing it and smashing it and smashing it over and over again. And you get this feeling of like, oh my gosh, it's going too far. And then out of nowhere, Cactus gets the comeback. Vader spends too much time on the outside beating up Cactus, making him suffer until he takes a big risk on a splash, crushes his ribs on the guardrail, and Cactus rolls into the ring, gets the count out win. And to me, as simple as that sounds, as simple as the match was, and I know we're talking about the evolution of art, that match to me, like, it told the whole narrative of the match, of the whole feud. And to me, like, a really great match, you don't need, and real great wrestlers, you don't need the storylines to make a match great. Wrestlers themselves, if they are on a level, are able to tell the story within the match and let you know what feelings they're trying to convey. Because for me, whether it's fighting or whatever, wrestling is a conversation between people, and they're figuring it out through violence. Yeah. And, you know, we always talk about, like, match quality, and New Japan is always heralded on that point. So my question, Jeremy, is to you is, do you feel like match quality is intrinsically tied to how people perceive a company, as far as, like, because some companies are seen as the work rate company?
Yeah, well, I think that gets established over time, and I mean, if you go back, to 1972, to the beginning of New Japan, to what it is now, like, I think that the company's always kind of been built on the fundamentals of wrestling. You look at the dojo system, and there's a lot of shoot style training, and kind of like a lot of us mentioned, making a struggle in a fight, I feel has kind of been built in the DNA of New Japan from the very beginning. And so you fast forward to now, and I think that all carries through. And I feel like promotions get a reputation over time of being a great work rate company like New Japan and like AEW. And also, I think people's tastes change over time, and there are certain things that people like. There are some people who hate AEW because they think there's too many flips, or it's too work rate. There's not enough talking, and so, like, we were all kind of saying it. I think great wrestling all really boils down to the individual person and what they're into. And I think something else that really makes a great wrestling match is just when you have great performers. And again, I know that could be subjective, but I feel like there are a lot of guys when you just watch them and they're great pro wrestlers. And a lot of the stuff that everybody mentioned on what makes a great match, I think that all works. But sometimes you can have just two great performers. If we threw Will Ospreay and Kento Miyahara, to my knowledge, I don't think they've ever wrestled, but if we threw them in the ring together for first time match, two of the best wrestlers in the world, like, that's going to be an incredible match. And there's no story, there's no build, it's just two incredible performers going out there. And so I think a lot of that plays into what makes a great match. And the level of performance you have, I think, builds into the promotion and builds into the style and builds the reputation.
Yeah, that's, yeah. Just a reminder, guys, if you want to chime in, go ahead and chime in. There's no judgments here. A lot of the time, people say that what makes a good match great is the audience. Whether that be audience participation, yeet, or stuff like loud crowds, caustic crowds that want to, be a part of the show. I was having this conversation with MJ the other day, where we were going on about how audiences should react to the show versus how some people feel like making the show about themselves. And I feel like MJ has it better prepared for this statement. So, if you don't mind, MJ.
Yeah. So, what we were talking about was, like, going to shows, and when I go to a show, I want to go and I want to cheer the good guys and I want to boo the bad guys, and I want the folks around me to do the same. And the last AEW show I was at was the All-In Finals in Calgary, and I was there. Like, I don't have a crew of people that I can roll to wrestling shows with, so I showed up on my own, but I did have a like a work colleague who like showed up with me. So so it's a little awkward in the first place. But yeah, well, like when I want to go to a show, I want to, I feel that you should participate in a way that enhances everyone's experience around you. So when you're cheering for the good guys, when you're booing the bad guys, that adds to the atmosphere. It also like is what the wrestlers want too. I feel like it's what the wrestlers want. The wrestlers don't want some dork, you know, shouting something like ridiculous that during a quiet period of the match, right? Like shouting something super obnoxious or whatever, right? For me, that kind of takes me out of it. It takes my like enjoyment of the event away when folks do that in the crowd. Not, I'll give another example. I was at Forbidden Door in Toronto, and it was CM Punk was coming out, and obviously like I wasn't a CM Punk fan, but a dude like probably a seat in front of me was the biggest CM Punk fan I've ever seen. And this guy was getting to see like his wrestling hero. And despite how I felt about the guy, you could see how pumped up he was. And I wasn't about to like boo that guy just because he likes CM Punk and I don't, right? Like I can boo CM Punk and let him cheer for CM Punk, and we can both have a good time doing it. So I would say like when you go to a show, participation is super fun, but like making the environment that an enjoyable environment for everyone, and the way that like the wrestlers kind of expect it to go or would like it to go. Like heels want to be booed, faces want to be cheered, and that's kind of it. So that's kind of a long way of saying like go to a show and have fun, but don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk to people, and don't be obnoxious.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
as the person that roots for the heels, I come in at the point of when I watch live wrestling, when I go to live wrestling, which I venture to say I've been to a lot of shows. So when I go to live wrestling for that 3 hour, 4 hour period, it is real. It is MMA. It might as well be UFC. So what I mean is I'm going to root for who I want to win. And it might not necessarily be the face this time. Like I'm a big Drew McIntyre fan. He hasn't been the face lately. I'm going to root for Drew McIntyre really, really hard. And to me, it enhances the experience when someone else is rooting for their guy just as hard as I'm rooting for my guy, because it makes it feel like a real sporting event. Because as a person that I love football, and I probably go to just as many football games as I go to wrestling shows, I love sitting next to someone that's rooting for the other team. I love that conflict that doesn't just exist in the arena where the event is happening. It's also me being involved in the experience, because someone who is supremely not athletic, that's as close that I'm going to get to competing. So I want that. I want the conflict of fans. But my big thing is I don't want you taking away from anyone else's experience. As in, when you're making it about you to the point where you're not even yelling what's in the match. Like I thank God for Yeet. Because it got rid of what? I don't hear what anymore when I go to WWE events. I hear Yeet. I prefer Yeet. Because what, it was used as this disruptive force when someone's trying to cut a promo or whatever. Yeet is more of a I agree with you situation, and that enhances the interview. So like I said, it comes down to where I'm at, what show I'm at, but I really want everybody to do what they want, but use common fucking sense.
Yeah.
I got something to add to this point about audience stuff. This is where I feel like my view of it from an acting perspective, from being in theater for many years, comes in. It is not unheard of in the past for theaters to have the crowd essentially operate as a character. This has been done for thousands of years. It's still done once every year at Easter in every Catholic church in the country. But beyond that, there's this expectation with wrestling where the crowd itself almost operates as an entire additional character within the theater that informs the outcomes. They don't necessarily need to play in a certain way. In fact, there's been many interesting cases where the crowd does not decide to go with what was intended, and that creates some pretty incredible moments. But having the crowd as the character almost operate in a way that enhances the match really makes a very big difference. There's some good examples of this and some bad examples of this. A good example, to use a New Japan relevant one, would be Katsuyori Shibata headbutting Kazuchika Okada, the crowd seeing the blood drip down his forehead, and you can just hear gasps all throughout the stadium. And that was the last, what was thought to be the last match of Shibata's career for a long time. And that creates this incredible heightening of the stakes. Another example, the only wrestling event I've ever attended in person, Grand Slam 2021, the bell ringing for Danielson Omega, and the entire crowd just getting up on their feet, losing their minds. Yes, yes, yes. That match, would it have been good in the empty arena era? Yes, but did it have that sort of magical spark of just getting straight in? Would it have had that without the crowd there? No. Now, a negative example, World's End, the first instance of that pay-per-view in AEW, accusations regarding Chris Jericho's outside conduct had come about right before, and so you had this sort of divide between the Team Jericho people and the anti-Jericho people, and the entire match just went completely off the rails, and the crowd couldn't decide whether they wanted to cheer for the team that Jericho was on because it had Sting and Darby Allin, or cheer every time Konosuke Takeshita clobbered Jericho, and so it created this weird, discordant performance that did not work.
Yeah, I always feel that the audience helps to craft the narrative for the audience at home. As far as how you're supposed to react, I do, in a sense, believe that heels should be booed, faces should be cheered, but there's also the fact that some guys just are not meant to be faces, and some guys just aren't meant to be heels. And so when you get that kind of dynamic, you just have this weird wash when you're watching a program. And so I'm going to give an example of, so I went to Revolution 2025 live, and you were there, Floyd. You could hear a pin drop during Moxley versus Edge. Am I right?
Yes, no one cared about that match.
Yeah. So in that instance, I was very bored. So in the interest of having fun and livening up all the kids around me who were also had like a little boo-boo face on, I decided to get up and start a yeet chant. And all of a sudden, all these kids were joining me in yeeting with their smarky parents saying, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Yeet." And it was just my section. Happened to be like right by the entrance ramp. We just were having fun, making stupid chants, doing all this stuff. And as far as like that kind of stuff, there is a disruptive fan that does that during a match to get to the wrestlers, to annoy the wrestlers, to get at the wrestlers. Whereas there's also the fans who are bored and trying to create their own fun because we spent our money to go to this and this is the garbage we're getting, so I'm going to make my own fun. And I do feel that there is kind of a responsibility on me as a fan to make sure that I'm not ruining someone else's time. I don't want to, because I usually, when I'm watching, I see the kids all around me, And when I was a kid, I would hate for like the 40-year-old guy to say, "Hey, your favorite wrestler? Actually, he sucks." I don't want to be that guy. Hold on, guys. Hold on. If anybody would like to continue, you can go ahead and continue. Just hold on.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and
Hello?
kind of echo what Floyd was saying.
I'm
where
podcasting right now.
I view wrestling, especially when you're in the arena,
Okay,
more of like a sport. So you should cheer for what team you want to cheer for. Like when I go to games, whether it's home or away, I root for my team, and I think you should, as an audience member, I think you should do the same. If you don't really have a rooting interest, I agree you should cheer the faces and boo the heels, but I also think we play an important role in the audience where, going back to Revolution, I think there's a good example where like the Outrunners were the face and Hurt Syndicate were the heels, but the Hurt Syndicate is way cooler. The Outrunners are just kind of goofs, and they kind of fumbled their spot, and they didn't necessarily get booed. But I think it's a good thing for the fans to kind of revolt against teams that or wrestlers that don't necessarily hold up their end of the bargain, because ultimately our voices are what get heard, and that kind of pushes the promotions to providing the product we want to see.
Yeah.
Additionally, building on that, what's worth noting is that unlike traditional theater, the crowd is paying to be there. The shows are not paying the crowd. If you want the crowd to participate in the character sense that you want them to, you need to put on a performance that makes them want to do that. You are not paying them to react in a way you want them to react. They will react to what resonates with them. And so at some point, it is on the promotion to create something that garners a reaction.
Yeah, and following up with that, I also think it, even if the promotion's not doing it, it definitely falls in the hands of the performers. And I think a great sign of a great pro wrestler is somebody who can control the crowd. I mean, we've seen time and time again in the history where there are matches where they're not getting the crowd reaction they want, but a really great worker can turn that around. And I know a lot of times people say, "Oh, well, the crowd hijacked the match," and yeah, there's definitely times where the crowd goes off the rails and there's no getting it back. But I think a really great pro wrestler can use what's happening with the crowd and manipulate that to get the result they want. And a lot of times we see, double turns where somebody's turning heel and turning face based off of the crowd reaction and kind of going in the direction of where the crowd's going. So I think there's very creative ways to use what the crowd is giving you to help shift it to a story you're trying to tell in your match.
Yeah, that's. I agree.
I completely agree with Jeremy. It is on the wrestler and how you're booked to steer the crowd to the chant that you want. I saw Will Hobbs and Miro, and they started to throw it through a couple forearms, and you saw mid-match, Miro saw what was going on, and he basically changed the whole match. And then for the next 5 or 10 minutes, they just forearmed each other until they came to a resolution, and the crowd was into it. That was a veteran wrestler recognizing what the crowd wanted and giving it to them.
Yeah, that crowd wants meat. I want meat. I always want meat. I'm a carnivore. And that goes on to say, I do have a question. If everybody wants to pop in, can everybody just give me your one-word favorite chant? What's your favorite chant? Everybody give me your favorite chant one at a time.
Mine is "Suck It."
I mean, I got a whoa. Whoa! Or, if you want to go actual chant, I'm going to go Dim Boys. Because that always fires me up when they're talking, when I'd be at a Briscoes match. Dim Boys, I just love that chant. Just loved it.
If we're going one word, I gotta go yes for Bryan Danielson. I mean, being in the crowd when he gets fired up and he's throwing the hands up, yes. It's so easy to get involved in it. It's just always an epic moment when that happens.
For me, it's either cowboy shit or whose house Swerve's house.
Yeah, the playing along crowd chants are excellent, and that's also a part of crowd control. Some people might call it cheating, but I call it being smart.
Yeah,
I
I
was
saw.
also gonna do
Which one?
who's was Swerve's house, being from Seattle, being at a lot of those original Defy shows, but not necessarily a chant. But I would say the Terminator clap is probably my favorite kind of fan interaction.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
When I think about chants and stuff from the crowd, I mean, there's only one guy that really charges me up and gives me what I want, and he definitely brings the boom to pro wrestling. That's that's my guy right now. Big Boom AJ.
Oh, you just hurt my soul. You just hurt my soul. Oh my god. Oh my god. I was like, I thought he was talking about Adam Cole. Oh, disgusting.
Hey, there's so many different things you could say that hit on a crowd thing, because you never know what becomes a hit. Because when we're watching like in 2005, I know some of you guys didn't watch in the mid 2000s, but there is a guy, Mr. Canada, where if you went to a show, whatever wrestling show you would go to, people would just say Canada, and something as innocuous as that would be like what kind of gets you over. And like we're seeing that still nowadays, whether that's yes, no, what, yeah, yeet, or like what have you. Boom, you know. And I think that that's a really interesting thing to like think about, of like what does get over in wrestling, and you never know what could. And these like little chants, these little like asides getting over and being associated with a wrestler, that's really interesting to me. Kind of taking it a bit back, back a little bit. I do have a little bit of a deeper question, and this is for everybody. Please, everybody, answer if you can. What is representation in wrestling? Have you seen yourself in a wrestler? Whether it be they represent your country, whether it is that they represent you because they look like you, or that they just have some innate quality that you see yourself in said wrestler and you have a connection to them. And
So
go.
it's funny. I think I have the funniest one because I am a black man from Oklahoma. The wrestler I always identified with growing up, and Jeremy's probably heard this of all people, is Arn Anderson. And people like a balding white guy that looked 40 when he was 21. You found something in common with him. Yes, I mean Arn Anderson. If you looked at him through the gaze of his relationship with Ric Flair, was the best friend you could ever have. He was your ride or die. Anytime someone wanted to go through Flair, they had to go through Arn Anderson. When Flair was acting, forget who he was. You know, Arn didn't call him Rick. He called him Champ. He reminded him every day. He was his ultimate hype man and everything. When Ric Flair started going off in the 90s and they needed a storyline, the storyline was Arn Anderson was finally the one that said, hey, bruh, you got out of control. And it's like, when I look for representation in wrestling, because there wasn't a lot of African Americans growing up. I mean, I had Iceman King Parsons, JYD, but they kind of played characters I didn't identify with. But I did identify with being a good friend. I did identify with having someone's back. I did identify, and it was always why I liked the bad guys. I always said good guys seem like they don't have friends, because bad guys, you would go Sting, and Sting would get jumped by the Horsemen 4-on-1, and no one would come out until after he's been beaten for 15 minutes. Where as soon as someone got the advantage on Ric Flair, all three of his guys were out there. And as a child, not knowing about the show aspect of it, and this is real, it was like, why wouldn't you want to be the quote-unquote bad guy? His friends actually have his back. So they seem like better people than the good guys whose friends didn't have their back. So I identified with Arn Anderson. Even now, I try to be the Arn Anderson to every friend. I always tried to be what they need at that moment. Do they need a hype man? Do they need a therapist? Do they need someone to do they need someone to be real with them? If it, like a lot of people lying to them, whatever you need, I try to be that, and that's all based on growing up a fan of Arn Anderson.
Excellent.
I can say that Floyd is a very great friend. First time meeting him in 2018 was getting to sleep on his hotel floor for All In Chicago. I hadn't even really known him yet. So Floyd's very generous, and a very great friend.
Thank Monty. What's his last name? I forgot. Thank the guy from basically nowhere, Georgia, Rome, Georgia. I don't know if you've ever tried to find Rome, Georgia on the map. It pretty much doesn't exist. So just shout out to that guy, the balding white guy from Rome, Georgia.
But I got a good one too. So growing up, I was a big WWF fan. Floyd, you and I are around the same age, so in my ethnic background, my father's Iraqi, so the being a big fan of Hulk Hogan when I was a little kid, when Sergeant Slaughter started walking around with the Iraqi flag and General Adnan, I was like, oh, what's going on here? I was like, Dad, what's General Adnan saying? What's he saying on the TV? Because he was yelling all sorts of stuff about Saddam in Arabic. And I'll never forget it because this was a one of the major, conflicts of my life in wrestling fans. My dad was like, Matthew, these men are the good guys. They're good men, good people. So my dad is telling me Sergeant Slaughter and General Adnan were the good guys. And lo and behold, Dad was right. So, yeah, I would say, obviously, Arab characters in professional wrestling have got short shrift, and there's there's the few guys who have got their shine, but typically you get the Muhammad Hassans and the shaky babies of the world. But yeah, I would say growing up that was a little funny piece of representation and seeing yourself and your father's nationality represented in a way. Yeah, that was a good one for me growing up.
Hey, real quick, MJ, you mind telling them about your father?
Yeah, I could sure. So quickly, I won't take too long because I got to hop off. I got to go to Costco. Speaking of Big Boom AJ, so my dad was a Greco-Roman wrestler back in Iraq when he was growing up. So this was in like my dad's quite a bit older. So this was in like the 50s and the late 50s and 60s, and I was going through his old photo album, and there was photos of him. And I can share it with you guys or share it in the Discord later. But there's a photo of him mid suplex, and he's got this guy in almost like a tiger suplex, but he's just tossing him over his shoulder, and he's got like unbelievable extension in the hips, and it's just like it's like a gorgeous wrestling photo. And I was like, Dad, what's this? And my dad has always said to me, Matt, when I'm watching wrestling, he's like, Matthew, I did this growing up. And I was like, yeah, I know, Dad. You legit, you were a shooter, Dad. I get it. But he told me, he was like, Matthew, this one here, this was fixed. And I was like, Dad, what are you talking about? He's like, we did this in front of an audience. And I was like, oh, were you doing like a wrestling demonstration? Like, were you showing like how to execute, certain like pins and whatnot? And he was like, no, Matthew, they didn't know. Me and this guy, we talked about it before. I do this, I toss him and, pin him, and it's over. Nobody knew anything. And I was like, oh my God, my dad was a worker back in the day. He's a shooter and a worker. Unbelievable. So yeah, it's that was a funny story. And I just saw these photos for the first time back in November when I was home visiting. So really really interesting kind of stuff, and a great story that connects me and my dad, and these things that you don't find out about your parents, until they're way past due, and he always used to tell me, oh Matthew, this is fixed, and I used to do this growing up, and I was like, it's not like that, Dad. I don't think you get it, but he did. He was the original OG worker.
Man, you Rocky Dozan over here.
Badass.
Like, oh, he also looks really jacked in that picture, guys. I can't wait for you to guys see it. As far as representation, back in the days, I used to, like in wrestling, you don't really see yourself, right? So there's a couple of guys I looked at, right? Because they kind of look like my uncles at the time, like whether it be like the Samoans or Haku or Ricky Steamboat look exactly like my godfather, or like looking at like Yokozuna, because my dad kind of looked like Yokozuna and Fatu back then. But a lot of the time, when you try to find yourself in pro wrestling, yeah, you look. There's the outward skin wise, but there's also like wrestlers who you find like an innate connection with. Like Floyd was talking about earlier, he was seeing himself represented in the Enforcer, Arn Anderson, and one of the guys that I definitely felt seen in was Cactus Jack. He was this wild, crazy, chunky guy, really offbeat, really somebody who got to know the people, and he was just, there's just something about him where I felt like that's my guy. That's who I felt when I was a kid, and then it goes later on when you find out like, yeah, he was actually in the backyards filming his matches, because I know like how many of us were growing up playing pro wrestling in the bounce houses and backyards and swimming pools, and like you feel like that sort of like connection to yourself and a wrestler. That does go on to say that later on down the lines, I was talking to my cousin about this because I'm trying to bring people on and talk to them. The moment I knew Batista was Filipino by like, because when he got signed, he like did all these interviews where he said his dad was whatever. And like there was a time when he went to the Philippines in 2005 after he won the title, and in that time period, actually WWE had got on all of like the TV in the Philippines and Asia, like Korea. So guys like John Cena and Batista were like, they were superstars over there, according to my family. So when I'm not sure Juan could speak this, but like when there's a guy who's a Filipino and they become a megastar, we as a people kind of back them, and whether that was Batista becoming when that's Batista becoming a movie star, or thank you, MJ.
Pacquiao fight.
Any Pacquiao fight, or like anything like
if Tagla becomes Pope, the Filipino cardinal, if he becomes Pope, I'm sure people will lose their minds.
Yeah, that's gonna be something like, I'm sure we're gonna hear that at every family party, barbecue, every freaking baby shower, whatever, name it, baptism. There's a palpable excitement you get when you see someone who's from your background and they actually succeed. So for me, like, I know I was already 20, but you see Batista, Big Jack, out there with the sun and the flag on his arm and representing, and like it gives you a sense of personal pride. And for my cousins, they grew up with him as like a symbol for like, oh, this is a superhero, he's a Filipino guy, if he can do it, I can do it. And I feel like as far as wrestling goes nowadays, and you do see more variety, more diversity as far as like as the roster goes. Now, as far as them being in the main event, you know, you take what you can get in American pro wrestling, but what we see nowadays isn't what we had like even like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, because we have like guys like Swerve on top. We have guys like the Hurt Syndicate. We got Roman Reigns in the Bloodline for as much as they're talked about. I know Nepo hired, but it's good to see brown skinned people on top, you know, for once. It's
Yeah, I have a unique experience with this because I didn't like really see myself in any black wrestlers growing up, but as I got older, you know,
yeah.
you know, I've actually seen the evolution because I was at WrestleMania 19, and I bring up WrestleMania 19 because it's infamous because they did a race based storyline, and the black guy lost.
Yeah.
I was there for that. Then uniquely,
Was that the Booker T Triple H one?
The Booker T Triple H one. Uniquely, I evolved because I was also at WrestleMania 35, or yeah, it was 35, and I got to see Kofi Mania. And then my most recent experience, I was at Dynasty when Swerve became the first Black AEW champion.
Yeah.
So I have literally lived through my life as a wrestling fan, lived through the evolution of the black character. The great thing about Swerve and the difference with Kofi, Swerve got to the top and he has stayed a main eventer in AEW's eyes. He's named important, where Kofi basically got relegated back to his old position. So if you look at it, the evolution of, I mean, that was a feud Booker T obviously should have won. I mean, based on the storyline subject, he should have won and he lost. Then there was this amazing groundswell that made Kofi Mania, and shit, because I was at Booker T, I was really into Kofi Mania. I didn't know if he was going to win. I saw Booker T, the same guy was running the show, so there's a good chance the black guy might lose. And he didn't. And then I saw a true elevation at Dynasty last year when Swerve won it, and now he is seen as a main eventer. The first fact that he was the world champion. So I've seen this evolution play out in front of me, and it's remarkable. I'm very proud. I'm very proud that the hard work is being, you know, finally looked upon. And then, you know, in New Jersey, we heard people, and that chant just took over everything, and it was just like, yeah. It's like you can't use that. You can't use the, oh, well, wrestling fans are mostly white. They don't identify with black people. They do. They do. They do. They see it, and the New Day was a big thing, and you've seen all these things. And it used to be you could name the top wrestlers, black wrestlers, on like one hand, but you really can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So when you hear excuses to keep the street fighters out there at WrestleMania, you're like, oh, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
like you can't.
Yeah, you can't make sense of that, man.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah. So I was going to say real quick that, you know, Kofi Mania was definitely a very special moment. I was in New York, wasn't at WrestleMania. We were actually hosting a social suplex event at the Hooters across from MSG, and I was there for a lot of social suplex guys, and, you know, I was sitting right next to Rich Latta from One Nation Radio, and yeah, when Kofi won, like we were on our feet, we jumped out of our chairs, we hugged, like it was just like a feel good moment, because, you know, like Floyd said, you know, a lot of black wrestlers, they don't get their moments, and, you know, that they'll get matches, but sometimes they don't give it to them, and so that was just a big special moment for them to actually, you know, go through that story and crown Kofi. Obviously, the follow up was not great, but on that one night, in that one moment, it was great to see.
Yeah, it's like you see this, and you feel like that kid in the front row when Ron Simmons won his world title. You feel that, nowadays. Like when I was a kid, I saw that and like, oh, that's so cool to see that guy so excited. And like before WWE used to celebrate Black History Month, they would highlight that moment and show the happiness in that kid sitting he runs to the front row. Ron Simmons gets a 3 on Big Van Vader, and he's doing a star jump, doing the splits, like jumping up and down. And you see that in that kid's face. You feel like his happiness and excitement, and like like as far as representation goes, whether you're brown, red, yellow, whatever, it's good to see us.
I didn't. I come from a slightly different position on this because I didn't get into wrestling until I was already an adult. Also, like half the things that were mentioned so far have been before my birth, because I was an '01 baby, so a lot of that stuff was before my time. But there were two sorts of things that did have me feel that sense of representation, even if it wasn't necessarily ethnically, since Batista had long retired by the time I'd gotten into wrestling. And that was the fact that in 2020 and 2021, I was severely depressed. It was bad. It was real bad. And for me, in the sort of isolated space I was in, watching the rise of Hangman Page, eventually culminating with the big sort of him saying, I finally believe in me too, and then finally beating Kenny Omega to win the world title. That got that feeling out of me. That's one. And then the other was the fact that I lived in Texas for a long time, down in Houston. And for me, from that time in my life, it was very relatable watching a brown person struggle with the fact that some suburban white woman was getting credit for their good work. So, hello, Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker.
Yeah.
Oh man, that story, that I really connected with that. And the moment when Aubrey counts 3 in that steel cage and you hear San Antonio, after the mariachi band walk out, after she carries the Texas flag out there, she's got the hat, she's got the gear, and she gets the win, and San Antonio comes unglued. It felt magical.
Yeah. I mean, don't count out the Swang, man. You know, we got the Swang TJP out there.
Oh, right, yeah.
But I mean, it's really good to see like whoever it is come up, and however, and that's why I said when you see yourself in that wrestler, and representation. Whether I know we're coming at all at it from like people of color perspective, but you also like sometimes like what you were saying, you saw yourself in Hangman as with the depression and all that stuff. And I think like as far as like fans and the group of fans that wrestlers like build up, it's because fans have like they either see themselves in that wrestler, or that there's something about that wrestler that connects them to each other. And yeah, that's enjoyed all those answers. And again, thank you guys for participating. And this might be the most contentious question I'm going to ask. But to everybody, please, I'm begging everybody to answer. Please give me the best breakfast you've had.
All right, so I was married. Divorced. I was married originally, and we had a tradition when we were married, and it was called Big Breakfast. So we didn't have a lot of money at that time. My wife at the time was in college, and I was pretty much the only one working. So on Sundays, we'd save up our money, and we'd get up in the morning and make this huge breakfast. And it's still to this day my favorite breakfast. It is eggs, either rather scrambled over medium with cheese, but you gotta have some eggs. You gotta have Cracker Barrel thick cut bacon, specifically Cracker Barrel thick cut bacon. She worked at Cracker Barrel, so she got the hookup. So you got to have the Cracker Barrel thick cut bacon. You got to have some fried potatoes and onions. That's what we grew up calling it. I've heard other people call it but yeah, I think it's new potatoes or all the different potatoes, but it's just sliced potatoes fried with onions, and then a big stack of Bisquick pancakes. And it was this is a lot of food. It is, because the goal and the purpose was to get so full that you went and took your big breakfast nap right after. That was our Sunday tradition. We would get up, we would cook as a collective, eat this monstrous amount of breakfast, and then go sleep for 3 hours. It was amazing.
Hell yeah.
Like I didn't, of course I didn't like my wife, but at the time, but I did love that breakfast. Until this day, it is still my favorite breakfast. It is the one thing I brought with me from that divorce. I got that in the divorce. I got big breakfast in the divorce.
Hey,
Way to go.
that's a win, bro. That's a win, brother. That's a win.
Do you want to go next, Jeremy, or should?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't have like a specific like place or remember one moment, but I mean, I'm a big fan of either get some stack of French toast or stack of pancakes, like Floyd said. A big fan of breakfast sausage. Gotta have the eggs. Get some bacon. I love a good home fries. Do like a brunch meal. Get some home fries in there. My latest thing right now is Saturday mornings. I cook these protein blueberry waffles, and I do some of those with eggs and sausage and bacon. That's a great way to kick off the weekend.
That sounds great. Go ahead.
Does sound good. Should I go or Tay? You wanna? I'll just. Okay. So, the memory I have from childhood, always doing, and I still do today sometimes with the folks, is blueberry pancakes from scratch. We had this griddle, but we would fire that thing up. We'd make from scratch blueberry pancakes, scrambled eggs, bacon, serve all that, and this is the crucial step, with real maple syrup. If you've got synthetic maple syrup, that fake shit, get it the fuck out of my face. I'm about that real maple syrup. It really makes a difference. But if you combine that with the blueberry pancakes, it's delightful.
Hey, I like Mrs. Butterworth, but to each their own.
I'm so sorry for you.
Dude, Mrs. Butterworth was considered fancy with us growing up.
Yo.
So I grew up on syrup, where it just said syrup on the bottle.
Syrup.
Or maple, like maple, butter flavored syrup.
Yeah.
That's what we had until I got older and could buy it on my own. And now I rock the Mrs. Butterworth,
Hey,
Yeah.
my grandma
She's
was
the love of my life.
Yeah, my grandma was diabetic, so like we didn't
we
get
would
the real.
splurge out on.
We didn't get the real syrup. We always got the sugar-free diabetic syrup when we had when my grandma made us like that hot giant pile of pancakes. Yo, Tay, do you want to say what your breakfast was?
Yeah, so I would say high school when we first started drinking and smoking weed and everything. My buddy's house that we would always stay the night at. He would always wake up the next morning and put together these really awesome breakfast burritos. So I've always had an affinity for that since. So anytime I'm out, we're getting breakfast with my fiance or anything. If they got a breakfast burrito on the menu, that's where I go.
Yo, so what kind of salsa you put on that burrito, bro? You get the green.
They got it. That's usually where I like to go.
Yeah. Okay. So Floyd, Juan, Tay. So I personally, I grew up eating big because I'm a big boy, and my grandma always used to cook for there was 13 of us, little fat boys growing up back then with me and my cousins, and I take this with me to this day. So what I like to do is I like to make some garlic fried rice. That's just rice with some garlic. You put some MSG in that stuff. You put some fish sauce or whatever to make it salty. But usually the main ingredient is going to be that garlic that gives it that pungent smell, and and then you fry up some eggs, whether that be a scramble like my wife likes, or I like to do fried eggs over easy. And of course you need a meat component in there, and what my people call it is longaniza, and that's like either it's a sweet red sausage full of fat, And I recommend this to y'all if you ever have the opportunity to try longanisa. I know, Ted, you from Seattle, so I'm sure there's like a Filipino joint up there that you could go to. But I fry up that sausage, so it's Filipino sausage, longanisa, fried eggs with garlic fried rice, tomatoes on the side, and to drink, I would always have like, if I'm being old school, I'll have a cup of Tampico. I'm not sure if people know what Tampico is, but it was like a jug of like orange drink that you would get from the store, and it was full of sugar. And ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you for joining me on this roundtable. I would like to thank you guys for coming on and spending your time with me. And I always say, like, the only thing that's real in life are the miles and the money. So I'm always happy to have some people that are happy to talk with me. And I want to thank MJ and Jeremy for joining us here. But would you guys like to say anything to the people as before we go?
I will say, I thank you for bringing me on there, and I often say on my show, if anyone listens, that the thing I take most from wrestling is the connections, the people that I've got to meet. So, I always just say, in wrestling, I personally like to meet people with differing opinions of myself. I feel like my wrestling fandom has grown so much since I've met people that know more about wrestling than me, which I didn't think existed for a long time. Because when you're in your circle and you're the guy that knows the most, you think you know everything. And then I found out quickly I didn't. And there were the people that knew a lot more than me. So I thank people. I thank for all the new friends I have. I thank for the new people I got to talk to. I'm so thankful to be here. To be invited to a round table with a bunch of people to talk about wrestling is something I would like to go back and tell a very sad 13-year-old Floyd that yeah, it's gonna be pretty dope when you get older, So this is a part of the dopeness. So thanks.
That's so good to hear, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been nice chatting with other people about wrestling. For one thing, I'm very much in the closet for my fandom, so I don't actually get a chance to chat out loud with people about it very much. The only time I really get to is there's one guy in the Minneapolis theater scene who's really into FTR. And I was so sheltered in my wrestling fandom that at that point when I met him, I wondered, wait, are you Floyd Johnson? Like, I legitimately thought there could only possibly be one massive FTR fan big enough to wear, like, 5 different FTR t-shirts to rehearsals and stuff. And because I'd only listened to All Things Elite one time, part of me wondered if it was you.
That would have been, you know what? It would have been funny if it was. It's so crazy, my FTR fandom, and it's kind of what I've been known for, known for in this wrestling space. And I will go to just random. I went to, it was in North Carolina before Revolution. Just went to this random show because the infantry was going to be on there, and somebody's like, "Are you FTR Express?" They heard me and knew me, and I was like, "I'm just Floyd. I'm just Floyd." I'm like, "No, I took FTR Express on after Bobby Eaton passed away, and FTR's favorite tag team is the Midnight Express." And I was like, "Man, FTR Express, that sounds cool." And now the FTR Express, I always say, represents the bus or the plane or whatever I take to get to go see FTR. So, yeah, that one guy was not me, but he is me in many ways because...
Well, for one thing, now I know that it couldn't be you because he's a very white man.
Yes. But when you talk to us FTR weirdos, you find out we kind of see wrestling through the same lens. We tend to like the same people.
What's up, Tay?
Yeah, thanks for putting this all together. It's been a blast. It's nice to get together and have a real discussion, like everyone else was saying. There's not a lot of people you can get deep into wrestling with in your close, like, personal circle.
Yeah.
So it's fun to actually get to nerd out on something a little deeper. and just what's happening in WWE.
Yeah. My goal for this whole project, and I'm gonna let you guys know this is gonna be this book ends all the different because I've been doing interviews for the last two three weeks, and it just so happened that I got you guys to come on, and I'm honored, honestly. Like, you don't know how much I appreciate all of you guys for coming on and giving me this time, giving me your time, because I know a lot of the times as wrestling fans, there is a feeling of loneliness, of like I'm the only one, and like I was telling Juan, because I usually ask this, like the question I ask like is, are you in the closet as a wrestling fan? And it's really good to like be able to let your freak flag fly, and to like be able to be with other people who enjoy the same sports entertainment that you do. And I just want to say thank you guys for coming on, and hopefully the next time I do one of these, maybe you guys will like to join me again, maybe some other time. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us here, and hopefully we hear back from any of you. If you want to get me, you can hit me at Dr. Lariat, DrLarrYyacht at gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or see me in the Discords, because you know I'm in too many of them. Besides that, you guys, everybody have a nice day, blessings, and thank you so much for joining us.